In the small town of Harrowswick, where streetlights flickered with a ghostly glow and shadows lingered longer than they should, lived a creature known only as Slag. Slag was not an ordinary monster. He resided in the dank, forgotten depths of old kitchen sinks, where grime gathered like a thick fog and echoes of water dripped like ominous whispers. His skin was a warped mosaic of rust and mold, glistening faintly in the gloom of the pipes. Slag was an amalgamation of everything that was discarded, bits of grease and splashes of unknown fluid that had long since been washed away. Children wove tales about him in hushed tones at school, their imaginations rich with the details of his grotesque form, bulging eyes set deeply in his misshapen head, sharp talons that could slice through the toughest of rags, and an insatiable hunger for chaos. But among adults, the horror of Slag was mostly shrugged off. A mere legend, they dismissed it, echoing the dismissive laughter that reverberated through their kitchens every time they wore their silence like armor. However, in the house of Eleanor Fitzroy, doubt began to creep in. Eleanor was an unremarkable woman in an unremarkable town, making a modest living as a librarian. Her heart was as black as the mold that curled in her sink, but her hunger for recognition twisted her desires into something far worse. One rainy evening, with clouds heavy and pregnant with despair, she decided she would awaken Slag. With an old cookbook as her guide, she prepared a foul concoction, leftover spaghetti, spoiled milk, and a dash of something sinister she had unearthed from a dusty cupboard. Even as she mixed the ingredients, the kitchen felt colder, and the shadows flickered like frightened spirits. Ignoring the warnings buried deep in her conscience, Eleanor poured the sludge into the sink, murmuring incantations she barely understood. The moment the mixture touched the tarnished basin, a low growl reverberated through the pipes. Shadows rippled around her, and just as Eleanor thought to retreat, Slag emerged, his eyes glowing with a wicked light. "Why have you summoned me, human?" he rasped, his voice like the grind of stone against stone. Eleanor's heart raced with excitement mingled with terror. "I want power," she declared, her voice steadier than she felt. "I want people to notice me." Slag's ghastly smile widened. "Power comes with a price, you know. Are you ready to pay?" "More than I've ever paid before," she replied eagerly, envisioning herself clad in influence as if it were a gown. With a flick of his clawed hand, Slag granted her wish. The next day, Eleanor woke to find whispers of her brilliance circulating among the townsfolk. Friends became admirers, and the people who had ignored her now clamored for her attention. Yet as her influence grew, so did Slag's insidious presence. Each compliment, felt like a shackle tightening around her heart. It began with small things, kitchen items going missing, shadows in the corners of her vision that danced and taunted her. The more she reveled in the power, the more Slag revealed his true nature. At night, in the solitude of her home, she could hear him cackling, a gurgling laugh that echoed from the sink, a sound that gnawed at her sanity. Eleanor soon realized that there was no escaping the cost of her ambition. The townsfolk were drawn to her like moths to a flame, but each of them arrived carrying their own darkness, a reflection of Slag's corrupting influence. Lovers became enemies, friends turned to betrayers, and Eleanor found herself dancing in a labyrinth of her own making. As the months passed, Slag's laughter became a permanent fixture in her life. Eleanor had distorted her soul in the pursuit of power, and now she was trapped, a marionette pulled by the strings of an evil creature that thrived on chaos. One evening, in a desperate bid, she tried to banish Slag, to expunge the creature that had turned her dreams into nightmares. But he simply laughed, a rumble of malice echoing through the pipes. "You invited me in, Eleanor. You cannot send me away." And so, the creature remained, a malevolent specter living in the depths of her sink, feeding off the chaos he had sown in the fabric of her life. The townspeople soon forgot that the windows of the Fitzroy house seemed ever a shade too dark. The kitchen sink continued to gurgle, binding Eleanor to the twisted creature that now shadowed her very existence, a pair of malignant eyes hidden just beneath the surface, observing, waiting, always hungry.